For winter solstice, I planned on refilming a rock art panel at Fremont Indian State Park, but then I realized that I had never filmed the solstice sunset at Parowan Gap. Parowan Gap in Iron County, Utah, is a striking geological feature known as a wind gap, a deep, narrow notch carved through the red hills by an ancient stream that predated the uplift of the surrounding terrain. Over time, tectonic uplift and erosion sculpted the landscape, and as the region's climate dried, the stream vanished, leaving behind the dramatic 600-foot deep pass we see today. The result is a natural corridor that not only reveals millions of years of geologic history, but also became a sacred site adorned with petroglyphs by indigenous peoples. I had visited the Gap before, but only to view the petroglyphs. Garth Norman did a 10-year study at the site, recording 93 petroglyph panels with over 1,500 figures. He recorded several astronomical alignments. One of the most intriguing features of Parowan Gap is a small cave shelter naturally sitting on its eastern end. Fire ash within has been dated to 700 CE, or Fremont occupation. But some of the rock art within appears to be archaic, probably dating into the BCEs, signifying people were using the shelter far before the Fremont. Archaeological evidence shows hunter-gatherers have been migrating through the gap for thousands of years. Near the cave stands a large boulder that, from the western end, appears to be a human face. It's called Face Rock, or the Guardian. The Paiute identify it with a guardian spirit who watches over the sacred site. On the winter cross-quarter days, when the sun is between fall equinox and winter solstice, the sun rises into the mouth of the boulder, and you can watch the simulacrum swallow the sun. The chief petroglyph panel at the site is called the zipper glyph, labeled because it appears to be a modern zipper. Norman interpreted it as a solar calendar, with the V-shaped lines representing the gap and the small circle at the bottom representing the eastern valley before the gap. The local Paiute tribe had a different interpretation, however, seeing it as a record of a migration whose leader is here depicted upside down because he is dead. The migration had many problems and toils. Both interpretations employ the marking of time. I can say that as you explore the rock images of the gap, you encounter a great many counting dots, lines, and geometric shapes that bend the mind towards seasons, cycles, and the counting of something. Norman interpreted this panel as a lunar calendar. The fan shape delineates the sky and the dots and lines represent lunar counts, with the top right figure being interpreted as the 19-year Metonic lunar count. We know several groups of the ancestral Puebloans were tracking this cycle, and the UCAP team has published a paper on this pendant found at Fremont Indian State Park during the excavations at Five Finger Ridge. The pendant shows 2 crescents, 13 circles, and 19 notches, all homologous numbers on this cycle. But alas, All we can do is create a network of circumstantial connections and diagnostic comparisons to other sites and trading cultures to make the argument. In our paper, we showed trading goods from ancestral Puebloan sites who were also tracking this cycle as found in the ethnography. Doing this with rock art is more problematic. As much of it is geometric and abstract, one can find any number of astronomical associations in it because one can make the numbers work, if that is what you are looking for. I am not discounting Norman's interpretations, but I am very cautious of accepting them without further data. Nevertheless, the solstice alignments, Norman points out, are convincing. Norman found a few cairns in the valley, where if one stands by them on key days, one can witness a solar hierophany. Here is a stone block, covered in petroglyphs, some distance from the gap, and by standing by it at the summer solstice, one witnesses the sun setting in the gap. A similar stone was found across the valley that worked the same for the winter solstice. Unfortunately, vandals destroyed it in the 1990s. I pulled a picture of it from Norman's work, but today a nondescript cluster of stones has been placed where it once stood. It was this modern cairn I was looking for when I arrived. A friend gave me a pin of the site, but said it was only good for about a 200-foot radius. Yeah, try about 500 feet. Well, it took me a bit, but I figured it out. I set up my camera and watched the sun turn its course. The weather was surprisingly warm for winter, though admittedly when the sun set it got cold real quick. And for the most part I had the place to myself, until at the very end when a few explorers joined me at the setting sun. During the equinoxes, the sun rises and sets along the axis of the gap. Cairns mark the solstices, and the rock face swallows the cross-quarter sun. I'd say this is pretty impressive. I have seen and measured many astronomical spaces. I have taken my camera and filmed the sunrise at sacred shrines. I am reminded that it wasn't until the 19th century that the pocket watch had become not only very accurate but also accessible to a wider demand. That marked the beginning point when people stopped looking at the sun to tell time. We now look at a machine and think mechanically as a result. Even when we look to the sky, it tends to be as a backdrop for selfies. For tens of thousands of years, people saw the sky as the origin of being. The sun was a living presence, and we were its seeds. I think one of the reasons I like surveying petroglyphs is because it draws me out of the white noise of the cubicle and connects me to something primal and cosmic, and perhaps ironically, very human. As nightfall enveloped the valley, I headed out because I had to make a drive to Fremont Indian State Park. But as I hiked down, this sight presented itself to me. No, that's not the moon. That's Venus, setting on the south mount of the Gap. It was so brilliant in the winter sky. And here are the stars in the Gap. There is a lot here, more than I have time for. But I will return on the cross-quarter dates to film The Guardian of the Gap. Until then, we continue to explore with wonder.